Yep, so today I'm going to do a little demo about a proof of concept for simplifying the CI and making it so that it can run locally on your machine. The current CI is pretty complex, in my opinion, and has a lot of different moving parts. But the main thing is that it is really old in some sense and has been tacked on piece by piece over the years. And because of this, is grown quite complex. And probably the biggest evidence of this is the way how it begins, how it builds the pulp container and starts it up. Basically, what happens currently is in our install script, what we do is we create this file, vars/main.yaml, and we specify a bunch of different configurations for pulp image based off what the current test is and what services are needed for that test. And then after we're done creating this file dynamically, we then use it to build a container and start the container. And if you look at these Ansible playbooks that it runs, you realize that what it's doing is it's pretty much doing exactly what Docker and Podman Compose do. Now, I think we actually made these CI before Docker Compose came out, so in some sense, we're actually first. And we've done the exact same thing. We just using Ansible. But now that Docker Compose actually exists, we probably don't need to be doing this crazy Ansible work anymore. And so that is the majority of what this work is doing, is moving over our crazy Ansible config over to Docker Compose. The second thing that this is doing is making it so that you can run this locally, which means a new makefile with targets that can be ran from the command line. And so this is going to be the most of my demo. But the basic idea is that the new CI workflows will basically be following what is in the makefiles. And so the CI will basically just be CI build and CI test. And this corresponds to the two workflows that are run, new build, new test. I currently have them in. And then inside build are these five steps, and then test has these 3 steps. And then we can go and look at what they are in the makefile. So for build, it's just simply building the package, installing the package, generating the bindings, or generating the open API spec, then generating the bindings and the binding stocks. And then test is simply running the setup script, running the install script, and then running the test script. And so this is how you can run it locally. And so I'm going to start doing that right now and then explain what each step is doing. So I'm going to go through it one by one. So first, make build. And we build the Python wheel. Then make install. Make install is currently broken, so I'm just going to copy what it should do, which is install the latest wheel that was built. Install. Then the next command was open API. Make open API. And so if we go to the OpenAPI target, what OpenAPI target does is it runs the Pulp Core Manager command OpenAPI with this environment variables, which sets the Pulp Core settings and sets the settings file. And if we scroll up, the settings file is equal to this settings file found in this test directory. By default, we're doing the Pulp test directory. And so that's one of the new things is that all of the configuration files for the CI are now built at plugin template time. So before the CI runs. And all of them are stored in a new folder in the CI directory. And so we can go to Pulp here, which corresponds to the Pulp runner in the CI. And we can see the settings file that was used. All these settings come from the settings inside the template config from in here. And so all the settings are already predefined in the template config. And so we can pre-make the settings file instead of making them at the CI runtime. And so we can see the OpenAPI command generated these API specs and placed them here in this folder. And now the next command in the makefile is the bindings one. So let's do that. Make bindings. And so this command runs this new script called build client, which is very similar to the build Python client script. And yeah, all it does is it takes the generated OpenAI spec from the last step and then generates the clients. And then after it's done generating the clients, it'll move them all over into this file, to this folder. So let's see what that is. Cool. So now we have the clients for all of the pieces that we need for building the CI image. We actually have a one too many, so I'm going to do a little cleanup. There's still some rough edges on my script that I need to take care of. This one's maybe here. These ones maybe here. Okay. There we go. So now we have the bindings. I'm going to skip building the bindings doc since they're not needed right now. And so that's the CI build set, right? We've done the build, install, OpenAPI, and the bindings. Now we're going to go to the test script, which follows the test YAML. And this does three things: test setup, test install, and test. So test setup, make test setup. Currently, what test setup does is it basically is just a check to see, hey, do you have all of the files needed to install the Python package into the container that we're going to build. So that's pretty nifty. Very simple script. And then install, new install is after we have all the files placed in our folder, we now have everything that we can to just put into the container at build time. And so that we don't need to run a bunch of extra install steps at runtime, like we currently are doing in our CI. And so what the new install script does is basically get all the files that we just created and then specify them into the compose command configuration. And so basically what this is doing is just saying, hey, use the compose command that's inside this folder, if there's any, and use all the files in this folder in order to build the Docker container. And so that is what this Docker container does, is it takes all the files that's inside the test folder and then builds the image and installs them all at once. And so we're installing the plugin, its client bindings, its settings file, its constraints, and its test requirements all in one go. So let me run that. Make test install. And this is typically pretty fast, especially after you have a lot of this cached on your system. So I expect that this should run even faster in the CI. Because my machine's pretty slow. Let's see. So yeah, the second thing that it does, this all script does, is, oops, that's the old one. Is we build a CLI image that we use to test the CLI. And so the goal is to basically have all the commands that are being ran be done inside of container images so that the user only needs the current directory checked out on their system in order to run the CI locally. And so to do that, we build a CLI container that checks out the Pulp CLI in order to be able to run the Pulp CLI test for that plugin in the test script. Yep. So I guess I should show in S3 and Azure, they have extra compose files to set up their backend services. And then in the install, if the tests are those, we just add them as one of the compose files used in the command. Okay, let's see. I think the test should be finished, and yes, it is. The install is finished. You can see our install. We have Pulp Python, Pulp Core, and it has all the client bindings. It has PyTest. And so now we have a new image, and final thing to do is test the image. And yep, this script is probably the one that's changed the least, the test script. It's almost the exact same, except now there are no installs, runtime installs with the script because everything has been pre-baked into the image. So we can just run the commands to check that the code is good. So yeah, normal make migrations check, then run the performance tests, unit tests, parallel tests, and then the CLI. And yeah, that's about it. After this one, go to make file. This is the last step in the CI tests. And yeah, that's basically a full CI run. I guess I can show in the YAML files. What the YAML files do now is they just call these steps that I've just been calling manually, just on their own, broken up. So it'd be nice to fit into the GitHub CI. So in the build, right, we do build first, then install, then open API, upload this stuff, then make the bindings, and then same in test. It just follows the same three make commands: make test setup, make test install, make test. So yeah, that is my demo. Does anyone have any questions? Grant?
Yeah, so first of all, outstanding. That's going to make a lot of things easier than what we've had. My question, we're talking to Docker directly in a couple of places. Will this work if we use Podman instead? How much change would that require?
Yes, it should work. I haven't tested it, but right now, if you go inside these scripts, they all use this compose command.
Right,
And this actually comes from utils.
right.
And what we do, I just copy and pasted this from
Mm-hmm.
what we do in O7 right now. Yeah, basically, I just try to see what containers I could have, and then that's what the compose command breaks down into.
Okay, okay. I thought I saw Docker actually in some of the commands somewhere in this demo, but as long as we can
It
switch.
should, I think it shows when you write out the
Ah,
make,
probably
it
right.
expands it correctly to what it
Perfect,
actually is running.
perfect. Okay, that's great, because that's my only real concern here is with some of the changes that Docker is going through. I just didn't want us to be absolutely dependent on it. That's outstanding.
Yeah,
So
good
Gerrod,
question.
well, just real quick, just for to make sure I'm understanding. So we build the container for Pulp. We build a container for Pulp CLI, and then we run all the tests. Is that correct?
Yep,
Outstanding.
we build and there's still a couple of rough edges that I need to figure out.
Sure.
So right now, yeah, we build the pull container, and this also builds any of the services that were specified by
Mm-hmm.
the test.
Mm-hmm.
And then currently what happens is when Pulp starts up, it will create a Pulp web server cert if there isn't one
Mm-hmm.
currently mounted. And we need this cert to add to Pulp 1. We need it to add to the CLI in order
Right.
for it to trust
Right.
the Pulp because we're testing with HTTPS
Right.
with SSL.
Self-signed certs and all that jazz. Yep.
And so there's still some chicanery going on here that I don't like very much, where basically we have to get this file off of the running instance. And then once we get it off, we can then use it to build the CLI image.
Right.
Um, so I'm not sure how I can get around this. Maybe we can just pre-build the file. It's just tests, but I don't know. Something I'm still working on.
I mean, we can, but that's actually not an uncommon actual real world pattern when you're dealing with what are essentially self-signed certs. You stand up the instance that has its endpoint set up and has built its CA, and the only place to get it from is the instance because it was created as part of setting up the instance. That's actually not terribly uncommon. I definitely appreciate that it's a rough edge, but it's also kind of a real world rough edge. So I would, if you can make it cleaner and more elegant, that's great. Um, and if you can't, it's not a big deal. Would be my take on that.
Cool. Um,
If we do put it into put that cert, if you get that working where it's like it's just provided to begin with, um, and the cert then therefore is checked in, then we'll have to put it in Git leaks, or else we'll get another false positive from ProdSec.
yeah, and that is the second thing. Well, there's a couple rough edges
Mm-hmm.
that I've been noticing work walking on this. Is that over the years we've added like a lot of things that we want to test for the
Mm-hmm.
CI, and they're kind of like all scattered throughout the plugin template,
Yep.
and so it's actually kind of hard to um, make sure that we have everything that's needed um, for every plugin. Like one of the big things is in our old system, we have four main scripts that are run during the test. It is before install, before script, and script.
Right.
And before install allows plugins to do pre and post before install script. So you can just define this in your CI. And then it is the same with before script.
Mhm.
You have the same thing. And so a plugin could have up to an extra 4 scripts currently. And it's kind of crazy. In my current example, I've simplified it down to just 2 extra scripts. So there's a post install and a post setup. And I think from looking at all the plugin CIs that this should be enough to cover most plugins and what they specifically do. So my hope is that things just become a lot easier to maintain and reason about, especially switching between different plugin CIs. And that we can simplify a lot of these extra options that are inside the template config. So that's not so crazy. Yeah, any other questions?
No question. I just wanted to say huge thanks for all of this. This was great. Both the simplification of the CI and also the make files.